This video is sponsored by Vivosun, who generously sent me this VS1000 full spectrum LED grow light for review. Taking a look inside the box, it comes with an instruction manual that has a 3-year warranty included, as well as everything you need to know about using a grow light if you're not familiar with using one. Taking a look at the face of the unit, you see the Samsung LEDs. Now, if you order this lamp, this is what you will receive in the box. Of course, you will get the grow light as well as some eye protection, which is important because these lights are very bright. You'll also receive everything that you need to hang this. It gives you a pulley system, everything that you need to hang this from a grow tent or a shelf, as well as a 120-volt power cord. Now, it took me about 2 minutes to get this hung in my grow tent, and I'm thrilled with it so far. One of the things I'm most excited about is it is dimmable, which is very helpful depending on the stage of growth your plant is in. You can also see that it's a very low profile grow light, so it's not taking up a lot of space in my tent, and I like that too. So if you think you might be interested in more information about this Vivosun grow light, check my description box below and follow the link. I'm happy and my plants are happy. Thank you, Vivosun. Hello and welcome to Peggy's Plants, coming to you from Central Florida. I've been growing plants in Leca for several years now, and I've gotten a lot of questions about what kind of plants can be grown in Leca and all of that. So I decided to share with you some of the plants that I'm growing in Leca. For those of you who are not familiar with Leca, Leca is an acronym, and it stands for Lightweight Clay Aggregate. In a nutshell, all it is it's a growing medium that takes the place of soil. It's made of clay pellets that absorb water. It can look like these little round balls here that I'm cleaning out to get some of the dust off, or they can look like these gray rock-looking ones. Either way, they do the same job. The color or kind that you use is really just a matter of personal preference. In comparison to soil, Leca is quite pricey. So my personal preference, I prefer whichever Leca that I can get at the best price. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a how-to video. I do have a how-to video. I'll link that in the description box below as well. But just so you have a general understanding of how Leca works, if you look at the bottom of the cylinder, you'll see that there is a water reservoir that has Leca in it. The Leca above that is not immersed in water, but it is wicking water up from the water reservoir, and that is how the roots of the plant get watered. In determining which of my plants I'm going to grow in Leca, it's usually based on watering. If it's a plant that has a water schedule, it needs to be watered more frequently than the rest of my plants. Or if it is a plant that I really can't figure out just how to make it happy, I'm definitely going to put those plants in Leca. I also really like to use Leca for my aroids. As you know, aroids need a nice chunky soil mix so that the roots can get air and the soil doesn't become compacted. Well, if you look at Leca, just because of the shape, it's not possible for it to compact. So the roots are still able to get nice air like they would in a chunky aroid mix. Now let's move on to what I actually grow in Leca. Several years ago, probably close to 10 years actually, I started growing orchids in Leca. And yes, they bloom, they flourish, they grow. I still have those same orchids. Then I transitioned over to houseplants. And now I would say probably about 60% of my houseplants are growing in Leca. So let me share some of them with you. We'll start with this Monstera Adensoniae. When I purchased this plant, it was in 2 small pieces, was not well rooted, and I could not make this plant happy for anything. I was really ready to toss this plant out. So I decided to give it one last chance. I put it in Leca. It is in a Lechuza self-watering pot, but I'm not using ponds. I am using Leca, and it's been doing well ever since. Another plant that I just could not figure out how to make happy was this Ficus Elastica Tanika. You all know, if you watch me, I have a bad history with ficus. However, now that I've started growing them in Leca, they've been doing much better. I haven't dropped any leaves, and in fact, I'm getting a lot of new growth. So ficus definitely like being grown in Leca. Of course, you need to make sure you pay attention to the lighting conditions as well, because they need a lot of light. I also find that my imported plants seem to do better when I put them directly into Leca. Like this Philodendron Melanochrysum. I've had this for a while now, but I imported it from Indonesia. As soon as I got it, I put it in Leca, and this plant, it didn't have a lot of roots. It has taken off, giving me lots of leaves, and it really is doing well. Next to that is my Monstera Adensoniae. This plant, I don't know how many of these I killed, and you know how much these plants cost, but I had a few cuttings, I killed them, and so this time when I got this plant, which I've had for over a year now, I decided to put it in Leca, and it has been growing and putting off new growth ever since I did that. Before putting it in Leca, this plant did absolutely nothing. In fact, I really thought I was going to lose it. And next to the albo is another import. It's a Philodendron Cataphyllum. I believe that's how it's pronounced. But again, I put this one directly into Leca when it was imported. It did not have a good root system at all, but I haven't lost any leaves from it. This plant has shown no decline at all. I don't hesitate to put a philodendron in Leca. And if you put a philodendron in Leca and you're having a problem, there might be something wrong with your technique. Just a possibility. Also growing in Leca is my ZZ Raven. This plant, as you can see, has gone berserk. It's growing in a lechuza pot in the gray Leca. It's a self-watering pot. I don't have to worry about this plant at all. And that's another nice thing about growing in Leca, is you don't have to stress as much if you have to go out of town for a week or whatever and be concerned that coming back all of your plants will be dead because they didn't get water. So that's definitely a benefit that has worked out well for me. And I have heard people say not to use Leca on plants that have tubers that hold water. Well, this is one of those plants, and as you can see, it's doing just fine. Now going over here is my Varicosum, and it too is growing in Leca. This is another one of those plants that I have killed several of, trying to just figure out the watering schedule, what to do to make this plant happy. And this was an import as well. As you can see, the lower leaves had some discoloration, but I did not lose one leaf on this plant when I got it from Indonesia. And you know, a lot of times these plants come in rough shape, having been in the mail for quite some time. But this plant is thriving and doing well. And moving on is the Florida Ghost that you already saw. It is growing in the Leca as well. This is another plant that was struggling. I couldn't figure it out for anything for some reason. I don't know why, just some plants don't work for you. I put this in Leca, it's doing fine. Another imported plant that I put immediately in Leca is this Philodendron Sodaroy, and it has rooted well, it's doing well. It does have some yellowing around the edges, but I've only had this plant, I would say, a couple of months, so it's still adjusting. And as you can see, it is a crawling plant, so I just have it laying across the top of the Leca, and it has grown roots down into it. So you just have to be creative. And as far as I'm concerned, there's really no plant that you can't, give Leca a try, crawling or climbing or whatever. Now, begonias, I was afraid to even buy a begonia, but I'm hearing that the cane begonias are easier to grow, and that has been my experience, but I couldn't figure out the watering put it in Leca. I have all of my begonias in Leca now, and they're doing well. Anthuriums are another one. I don't know why I decided to start getting into anthuriums. I guess the leaves or that lure of them, it's just like, ugh. But they can be difficult. Anyone who grows anthuriums know how difficult they can be. And nothing was working for me, even in my grow tent. So I ended up giving Leca a try, and now I'm having success even with my anthuriums. Now you may have seen this Anthurium luxurians hybrid in one of my videos. I did some cuttings off of it and rooted the cuttings. This is actually one of the cuttings, and I rooted them in Leca. I root a lot of cuttings in Leca, and I haven't had any problems with rot. And that's another reason I really like using Leca. And I feel like it's because the plant, the roots, the stem is not actually sitting down in water. It's just getting the moisture from the clay pellets. So I feel like it's just not getting enough water for it to rot. And again, these anthuriums, this one, if you saw my video when I purchased this one, no roots. These have had spider mites. I have cut all of the leaves off and started from scratch, just like this one here, if you can see in this bag. It's another anthurium that wasn't doing well, ended up with spider mites. I cut all the leaves off, put it in this bag, put it in Leca, and it is already starting to sprout some growth. So Leca has definitely been a lifesaver for me. And as you can see, these plants are actually in my grow tent. And yes, I use Leca in my grow tent. Anywhere I would use soil, I will also use Leca. This is my pink princess. All of these cuttings came from one plant, and I propagated it. I rooted them in this grow tent in self-watering pots in Leca, and they're doing well. And the same is with this Hoya Quintianavaragata. Let me pull some of them out and just show you some of the roots. These plants are really thriving in Leca. I have some of everything in this grow tent, but here are the roots from the pink princess. As you can see, doing quite well. And then next to it is the Hoya Quintianavaragata. Look at the roots on this. And I had tried to propagate this plant several times with no success. It just kept drying out before I could really get a good root system. But in the Leca and the water, you see the water down there, this plant has rooted and is doing great. Some of the other plants that I have successfully growing in Leca are this Philodendron Melanochrysum. This was a cutting that I rooted in Leca as well, and it is doing just fine. And out in my plant room, I have this Anthurium veitchii that I purchased as a starter plug. And I almost lost this plant a couple of times, decided to give it a try in the Leca. And as you can see, it's doing well. It's putting out a lot of new leaves, and it has some nice, thick, healthy roots going. And here I have this little Burl Marks Fantasy, which has been a chore trying to keep alive, but it's doing well in Leca. Here's the Skindapsis Silver Hero that I purchased as several cuttings, also imported from Indonesia. And as you can see, this plant is doing well also. And it's in a self-watering pot. I use self-watering pots with most of my Leca if they're not in glass cylinders. I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason, Skindapsis I have had trouble with. The leaves always curling, couldn't get the water straight, the watering schedule. But since I have put all of these Skindapsis in Leca, they're all doing well. And here is my Manjula Pothos. It's also liking the Leca. I don't know, this plant started declining on the move just like This Queen Pothos, Marble Queen Pothos, started really declining after I moved here. Got them in Leca, and both of them are now doing well. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to convert all of my plants to Leca. That is not my intention. But again, the plants that I have problems with the watering or the care or whatever, I put them in Leca. They're doing well. It works for me in traveling. So go ahead, give it a try. Don't forget there's a link in the description box below if you're interested in seeing a step-by-step how to grow plants in Leca. Thanks for watching. Take care. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.